Angelic Process. Well, that's probably a band you've never heard of, which is a damn shame. But unfortunately, they've been buried by time, dust, dirt, and cement. No one's ever really heard of these guys, and, well, I really wish it was different. But the Angelic Process is a very obscure, unknown group. It's a duo. Not even anyone really knows too much about the people within the band. The only names I could dig up were K. Angelus and M. Dragonfly. We're going to be talking about their latest effort. And by latest, I don't mean something that just came out. We'll be talking about their final album from 2007, Weighing Souls with Sand. Now, what must be said before getting into this is, unfortunately, the Angelic Process is indeed no more. In 2008, after Weighing Souls with Sand was released, it is understood that M. Dragonfly suffered a debilitating hand injury that rendered him unable to play music. And clearly, in listening to the music that the Angelic Process creates, well, you can understand how upsetting that was. And as a result, he took his own life. It was believed that the two members of this band were also a married couple. So, that increases how unfortunate things were. They formed in 1999 in the United States, released a few EPs, 2 full-lengths, but what's regarded as their most beautiful work is their swan song, released only a year before Dragonfly killed himself. Weighing Souls with Sand. I discovered this as a random click as I was going through YouTube videos looking for new music. Can't remember how, can't remember what band led me to it. I was glad I did. Cover art interested me, as did the name. Now, the type of music that the Angelic Process played was a variant of drone. Now, when I say drone, most of you out there are going to be thinking something like Sun or Earth, perhaps Boris, or anything of the sort. And why wouldn't you? That is the go-to drone thought, especially Sun, as they're very active in the drone community as of late. You think of songs like Agartha from Monoliths and Dimensions. Perhaps you think of Portal, with their latest album last year, Vexovoid. Whatever it is you think of when you think of drone, I feel that the dominant thought that comes to mind is just the sound of Agartha. If any of you have heard that, then you know it's the typical Sun song, where it's just the powerful, grinding, oppressive guitar drone. Now, drone is not a genre for everybody, of course. I like it, but that's because I've learned to like it. At first, I didn't quite understand it, but then one time I had a connection with it, and now I understand drone. We'll talk about that possibly in a later video. Well, we'll discuss it a little more here. But Sun is the band that I think most people go to think of when they think of drone. Some people love them, some people hate them. But a lot of people end up thinking that drone is just, Sun is the only drone band out there. When they think of drone, they think Sun. And there's really no area for experimentation because Sun does everything. Sun is drone, drone is Sun, that's it. Well, the Angelic Process started doing things a little while before Sun became well known. Black One and Monoliths and Dimensions, are fairly new. Angelic Process has been around for a little while, around the time that Earth was playing again. Now, Weighing Souls with Sand, that takes a different approach to drone. Sun's style of drone is a very, very dark, very gothic look. If I were to say the name, and you're familiar with the music, and I were to ask you to associate it with a color, you'd most likely say black, or a dark gray. You wouldn't be associating many colors with Sun, especially not bright ones if you did. Sun goes for a very oppressive, dark, within the crypts atmosphere. And that's acceptable. That's cool. It feels like a horror-like drone. As well as we know, one song, I can't remember which, but guest vocalist, who was extremely claustrophobic, was locked inside of a coffin. Recorded his vocals. I believe that was Bathory Ezbert. Ezerbe? I can't remember. It was near the end of Black One. If you're familiar, you know what I'm talking about. So they go for a very horror-oriented atmosphere. The Angelic process, however, they do play drone, but they go for a different style. They go for a mix. Whereas Sun is a very oppressive, vile, black-feeling drone. The Angelic process takes a different, almost opposite look. That certainly does not mean that they are in any ways not a force to be reckoned with, or they are upbeat. When I say they're not constantly oppressive and not down and dark, that doesn't mean they're light and upbeat and happy. But there's something different to it. They play an ambient, atmospheric, shoegazy, emotional kind of drone. It's an avant-garde drone, as if to say drone isn't avant-garde to begin with. Weighing Souls with Sand is just over an hour long if you consider the bonus track. And it's one hell of an experience. It's one of the most beautiful albums that I've had the pleasure of hearing. Ever since I first listened, I've wanted to go back and listen to it some more. It was an album that, even now, if I were to throw it on and listen to it, it's an album that creeps into you and gets inside of your skin and infiltrates into your mind. Clearly, the two individuals inside this band, of course, rest in peace, M. Dragonfly, clearly they have a passion for what they're making. But just as clearly, there's also some mental distress, mental terror, mental warfare going on inside of their minds or hearts. Because what is presented on this disc is not drone for the sake of drone. It's not art. It's not trying to be pushy and edgy and saying, hey, look what we can do. Not trying to throw Sun under the bus here, but that's sort of the idea of what they do. They try and be different and experimental. The Angelic process, when I hear it, I feel anguish from the heart. There is something very real contained in that music. Even bands like Anal Nathrak, we know that Vitriol has a very skewed perspective of the world and translates that into his music. But yet, Anal Nathrak just manages to contain pure rage. There's never any other gambit of emotion inside of it besides insanity and rage. The Angelic process, however, feels completely different. I often associate albums with a sort of texture, if you will. A visual, more like it. Perhaps colors. And on this album, what is constantly called to mind is, in effect, utilizing the color scheme of the cover art, as you'll see here. The fiery reds and oranges and yellows with the black, very hellish seeming idea. Or yet, the thing is, I say hellish because I've experienced this album and I know what is contained therein. But yet when you hear Angelic process, weighing souls with sand, you see this cover with an angel wing and you see these fiery evening or morning colors. Well, you think perhaps this is an album about heaven, about happiness and where the soul goes. But that is not the case, which for many fans out there of metal music and experimental, I'm sure they're happy about that because no one wants happiness in their music, do they? Weighing Souls with Sand is a very dark journey. It's a journey into very raw and brutal emotions. It's a journey into sadness, abandonment, loss, loneliness, rage, fear, terror, everything else you could imagine. The edges of sanity are pushed at moments. The band makes good use of drums, heavy bass, noise, and reverb to create an ethereal feeling, but yet organic feeling experience. From the very beginning of this album to the end, you're hooked. When I listened to it, time just went by. It's an album that I highly recommend you listen to in the dark, alone. It's not an album that you're going to want to throw on in the car, even with your other metalhead buddies. You're just not going to want to do that. This album is an experience best undertaken in solemnity, alone. If you look up some of the lyrics that there are to the songs, you'll find that there aren't much in the way of lines per song. Maybe repetition within a song, or none at all. There's different lyrics in every song, but they're not necessarily long lyrics. But here's the thing. That works as a plus because the lyrics are emotional, heartfelt. As we know, Dragonfly wrote these lyrics, played most of the music. Angelic also contributed in great part, but Dragonfly is believed to be the main inspiration behind these things. And if you read into these lyrics and look at what they're saying, they may seem simplistic at first, but then you understand that this is a man who music meant so much to him, and because he couldn't play it, he took his own life. You understand what type of music he made and how it sounded, and just how important it all was. You look into it with those lyrics and you see something inside. You hear that music. You hear those vocals. And you begin to understand what the angelic process truly is. When I hear this album, I consider a scene inside of my head. And it seems to stick with me. It didn't truly come to mind until I got to near the very end with one of the last tracks, Burning in the Undertow of God. Very powerful. The song is about abandonment and feeling like even what many people regard as their answer, the Lord, God, or anything else. In this track, it appears that you can assume that the writer, Dragonfly, that this is him in the song, not some character, not some story, not some ulterior individual within the lyrics of the song, not like most rock music that you'll hear on the radio today, but actually placing himself within this music. The lyrics speak of abandonment, total loss, nothingness. Finding that you're alone and no one can give you the answers that you need. And that it seems that you can do nothing but suffer. Now, you can't hear these lyrics within the music itself because they're screamed, of course. And aside from Manal Nathrak's insane screaming, these are some of the most impressive screamed vocals I've ever heard. They're done during the drone sections, as this album often shifts between the drone and shoegaze and ambience, and the uses of bass, oppressiveness in the music. They're of passionate rage and sadness, and it's powerful. And this song makes excellent use of pacing and loudness. The bass inside of the ears, it's not like, playing a bass guitar, but bass tones. The bass increases throughout the song and gets more oppressive and more violent from the beginning where it's calm and builds and builds and feels like it's going to rock your headphones off. And then it comes back, the drone comes back that you've been so used to for the rest of the album, but sounds like the instruments are about ready to shatter into a million pieces. And all you can hear is the screaming around you of this utter loss. And perhaps some female vocals behind. And it sets a very terrifying tone. When I hear this album, I picture a city, perhaps, in the olden times. Or even now could work, but I end up picturing the olden times. Think of perhaps the French Revolution during the Great Terror. I picture an evening, perhaps nearly nighttime, where the only light is the dying sunset. But that is not all. There is other light cast throughout the city. from the burning buildings across town. The fire that spreads. Perhaps even this could be during the Dark Ages. Because when I hear this, I picture blackness with a spreading fire, and uncontrollableness. Corpses burning. You can hear the flesh charring. Smell the rot. Smoldering and searing. Embers everywhere. Men and women crawling in the streets, slowly dying. Wondering why their Lord God has abandoned them. Wondering why no one has come to save them. The people who are alive are carrying out terrible torture and acts of murder, lynchings and executions. For what reason? I picture being inside of this world of suffering and death. The sounds and sights and smells and tastes are all encapsulated within this music. You feel you are here witnessing inhuman violence and desolation. You're alone. You're afraid you could be next, that this mob of inhumanity may find you, or you may end up like one of the corpses on the ground. And the only things, the colors there are darkness and that of the fires, much like hell. This album is one of loss, of darkness, of fear, pain, and anguish. But yet it's of beauty. Because the angelic process proves that even in the darkest darkness, there is still a beauty to be had. It sounds almost sort of hokey to say that, because you often hear emo kids who love metalcore saying how there's beauty in darkness. I'm so cool, I wear black. But no. This is art. This is beauty in darkness. Because of the musicianship and the writing. Because of the passion and the song creation and the lyrics and the people behind it. Weighing Souls with Sand by the Angelic Process is an album you really must check out. It's not for everybody. You gotta be willing to work with it. You gotta be willing to immerse yourself within its atmosphere. Take it in. Let it fill you up. Let it affect you for an hour. Put yourself into the shoes of the writer behind that music. Be prepared to feel an experience unlike anything else. The emotions expressed here on this album are very dark, forlorn, full of rage and anger. But yet there is a beauty to it that I simply cannot describe. The use of the shoegaze elements to contrast with the drone. It's not just straight drone like Sun. It's an experimental avant-garde of passion that I really suggest you need to hear. That's my music review and suggestion for this week. I'll be back next week with some more. Thank you for watching. I'm Kenshin, and I'm peacing the fuck out. I'll see you guys later.